Okay, well, you do look good, so that's confirmed.
I've got your seal of approval.
Yeah, okay, we are live on YouTube. This is The Correction, episode 19. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a little while as we've been working on a few things on the back end, but it is RT, your host, Random Task, here today with Brian Beamish, the co-founder and sort of chief contributor to the rationalinvestor.com, TRI. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm good. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm ready to have some fun with you.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on today. And as some of our members may have noticed, we've been sending out some emails this week talking a lot about TRI, the Rational Investor, and their trade school, which offers sort of another echelon of trade education that a number of our members had expressed interest in. And we thought, you know what, with these two communities working together, it would be mutually beneficial for everybody. And so without further ado, I'd like to just get off start off with a bit of my own story in crypto. Oh, there we go. We are live on YouTube. That's confirmed. So real quick, I just want to talk a little bit about how I got started in crypto because, I came in with no background in trading, no background in finance. And, it's a lot of sort of feeling around in the dark. And thankfully it was 2017. And that's how it sort of started off. And I was lucky enough for it to be in a bull cycle and managed to get out with my shirt. But it wasn't really until I settled into the space and started exploring educational options, that I found sort of my momentum in the space and my confidence. And I was a member at Bravado Trading, which I found a lot of value in as well. And then I found the rationalinvestor.com. You guys were actually full the first time I tried to sign up. Because it was 2017, Brian.
Oh man, it was crazy at the top of the market there.
Yeah, and it was a little wild. And so I actually couldn't get in the first time I tried to sign up for that course. Unfortunately, I think it would have helped me out a lot in 2018. But I came back in September 2018, signed up for level 1. And right away, it just shone a light into a space of sort of things that I didn't know, if that makes sense. You kind of have what you know, and then there's things you don't know. And then there's stuff that you didn't even realize that you didn't know. And that's, I think, about what was the most value for me. So, oh my gosh, we got a trading view alert. Okay. So without any more delays, I'd like to talk more about you and what you can offer. You are the sort of focus of tonight's show. And so maybe just start off telling us a little bit about your background in trading.
All right. Let's see. I got my first job in the stock market in 1988. So if any of your viewers remember, there was a pretty significant event that happened in 1987 in the stock market.
I was born. 1987, you got me.
It just goes to show how old I am. But I don't know whether the background here is that good. Am I centered on the camera and stuff? Do I look okay?
Yeah, if you you're centered. I'd show you on YouTube, but to be honest, you're looking
okay. I mean, as long as you give me the seal of approval, it's fine. So I started working in compliance, and actually I worked on a credit control desk for a company called Burns Fry. So any of your old timers who remember the full service brokerage days back then, actually the banks were, after the Great Depression, they got the banks out of the brokerage business. And so these were all just private firms that used to be brokers for the public. And I worked on the credit control desk, and it was really interesting. Back in those days, we used to have to use Dow Jones Telerate machines to get stock quotes, and they were on like the old, black screen with like the green, ticker and stuff that ran by. I mean, just like a complete generation ago, a long, long time ago. I basically spent, I would say, easily the next 20, 30 years. And that was a high school summer job. I went to UBC, which is a local university out here in British Columbia. And then right after UBC, just jumped right back into the market. Worked for a company called Richardson Greenshields, the Richardson family out of Winnipeg. They were old-time commodities brokers. and that was I think 1992, and sort of the start of my full-time career. And I've been working in and around the brokerage industry, doing almost every possible job possible since then. Back office, retail, compliance, both retail customer service as well as brokering. I guess I got my broker's license back in 1996, 1997. I also was licensed to be a commodities broker, which is a completely different licensing program. I was a financial advisor, and I think the designation in Canada at that point was FMA, Financial Management Advisor. And that was all through the dot-com boom. Did lots of financial planning. And actually, I got my derivatives license at that point. So I was an options broker. And really fascinating to learn the different aspects of being like a broker versus working in operations. Basically heard almost every single possible story under the sun, with regard to how people couldn't pay their bills. But anyway, through early 2000, my wife and I, we had a child, and he was diagnosed special needs in, I guess, the fall of 2001, spring 2002. So really concentrated on supporting them through that, but was also a broker. And actually, I transferred my business. And I don't know whether brokers are allowed to do this nowadays, but I actually transferred my business to a home office, and I ran my book out of there. And then I left the brokerage house because a couple of my bigger clients discovered this place called Interactive Brokers. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with that, but basically I was able, pardon me?
I just signed up actually this week.
Oh, good. Yeah. And it's interesting because Interactive finally gave sort of the public the access to sort of like institutional platforms. And we actually ran a small hedge fund for about 3 or 4 years, just managing their larger accounts. And then they sort of were my backers. And we just sat and traded the market. In fact, one of my best trades in the market was buying tech in 2002, 2003 at $2.50 a share. I don't know whether any of you remember that. Through the dot-com boom, tech was trading at, I guess, no, that must have been a bit later. That was actually after the Olympics. So I guess that was 2008. But the stock was like $40, $50 a share. It cranked all the way down to $2 a share. We went and just loaded up the boat with call options. And it worked its way back to 20, $30 a share. And needless to say, my partners were very happy.
That's actually a question that just popped into my head. I wanted to ask you, since I got you on the AMA here, what is the largest position you've ever put on in your career?
Well, I mean, it's tough to say, right? Because are you talking about like outright ownership, or are you talking about margin position? Like in the commodities market, right? You only have to put like, at best like 5% margin down. So, and people used to always I remember there was this one bond trader, and at any given point in time, if you actually took like the net sum of his portfolio, he was managing like $1 billion. But he's like, well, the margin requirement's only 5% of that. So it's not really that big of a portfolio.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we go the margin route with futures contracts, oh goodness, they got pretty big, especially when I was trading crude. Like I was trading crude for a prop firm when crude was $105, $110 a barrel. And that's 1,000 1,000 barrels. I mean, it is a big contract. I mean, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there going, oh, Jesus H. Christ, I had like a 5 lot on, right? So that's like $500,000 just on a day trade. It's like, woo. But if you're talking outright stock positions, and then again, are you talking about my own personal account? Or are you talking about the little mini?
No, I wouldn't ask you that on the air. I was thinking, just for a little fun with the audience here,
I remember we traded
Yeah.
a company called Polymet Mining, and combined, and it was like a $2-3 stock at that point, and combined across the board, we must have had a 500,000 shares. I've taken some pretty big positions in stocks. And then, like I said, I have strapped on, like multiple futures contracts. But that's kind of cheating because you only have to put like 5% down. So it's not really like you're controlling the whole contract. But
Yeah. Oh, sorry to derail you. I just, popped into my head and I thought I'm going to take advantage of having you here and having your ear and getting to ask you anything.
well, hell, at the top of the silly crypto market, our little funny little old lady altcoin portfolio was worth like $700,000-800,000, and
For the
that
record,
was just supposed to be a play fund.
that started with $500, did it not?
Yeah, that's right. $525. We bought 1.25 BTC at like $460 a coin or something like that.
So sick. So that's actually what caught my eye when I first went to your site. I was like, wait a sec, they started this with $500, and I think a lot of people made crazy money that year. But the thing that really set you guys aside is that you held on to a lot of that money.
Yeah, that's right.
You closed a lot of positions near the top, which is an incredible achievement in this world of long it. And I remember in 2017 December there was a lot of big accounts on Twitter calling longs, and again, I wish you guys had room in your program. I would have been in there. And I heard the word on the street as you were talking to people about shutting down shop for a little bit, that things got maybe a little too far ahead.
Well, and that's the thing is I was a broker through the .com boom. And I remember exactly what happened on the other side of that. I'm a big fan of what they call playing from a position of strength. So our original goal was to take that $500 and turn it into $100,000. And everybody, when I said I was going to do that, they're like, "Oh, you're crazy, man.
Yeah,
you'll never be able to do that, right?" So we did that. So I took 100, and then I went and bought a whole bunch of these stable coins and all that kind of stuff. Stable, yeah, right. And gold and all that kind of stuff to try and just sort of diversify a bit. And the interesting thing, I don't even know if you remember this from our education program, but my whole thesis in the market is this whole concept of the fear and greed cycles. I was absolutely convinced that the top of the fear cycle, which is sort of a general preference toward commodity and hard assets, and more importantly, a lack of faith by the public in sort of classic financial instruments, things like the US dollar, should have come in Q3 2017. And frankly speaking, looking back, I'm actually quite shocked at how that entire crypto story played out right through that event. And I did take exactly what I said I was going to take out of the market, and we've kept it. But at the same time, too, I'm a big fan of what they call establishing free positions. Sell half on a double, then that way you get all your original capital back. Plus you have basically a risk-free position on the rest of the position. And kind of as a student of the market, I've ridden a lot of these sort of free positions right back down. There's no risk to me, so I don't really care. But I've been really, as a student of the market, I've been watching how the market is going through the process of cleaning up that bubble. And the irony of it all is that, and I often tell people this, I would be really curious just to close my eyes, open my eyes, and it's like 20 years later, and just see where all of these free positions are. Because I can absolutely guarantee you within that boom there in 2017, there and the subsequent break, there will be the Amazons in that story. And Amazon was a great example from the .com boom, where it went from like $2-3 a share up to $100-200 a share on a split adjusted basis, came right back down to like $5 a share or something like that through the dot-com bust. And of course, everybody knows what Amazon is today.
Yeah.
So in a weird sort of way, I really like just establishing risk-free positions. I do it in the stock market all the time. And then just seeing where the wind blows. Because once you've got that free position, who cares? And there's no risk associated with it.
Well, and you can sleep at night. You get your money back to make a new decision or new play, right? I mean,
That's right.
Yeah.
Capital preservation in this game is absolutely critical. Right?
Yeah. So, which is actually perhaps a great segue into, so I wanted to go next, which is, really the focus, I guess, tonight and with our collaboration is, $1,000 is a steep ask for a lot of people, for average people. And I think, what I try to tell my buddies, because they might have 5, 10,000 or a little less in their trading account. And they're like, oh man, I don't want to spend all that. Like it's what I trade with. And my response to them is always like, okay, cool. Because like, how's your trading doing over the last few months? Because a lot of them, it's like buy the hype, sell the dump. And that's just what you do when you don't have a plan a lot of the time, right? You see everyone, where do you go? You go to Twitter, you're asking people like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? And it's always the wrong information because that's just the way that markets work. BNB near the top, everyone was like, it's the safest investment. If you just put all your money in, it would have been fine. It's like, yeah, over the last 2 years, but it was looking toppy. They had a ban announced. And, thankfully with a lot of what I learned from you guys, I was posting things just like, hey, let's let this thing cool off. We're going into September 12th. Well, here we are today. And, it's touching its RLZ right on the 786, right where I've been waiting for it. So as somebody who's maybe thinking about making that financial and time commitment, really, what is one of some of the chief selling points, I think, that you could maybe display or sort of share with us tonight, if somebody was to ask, why should I give you $1,000
well,
of my trade account? I mean, it's a hard question.
I mean, I have been told countless times, no doubt about it, that the price point for our education program is staggering low. I've actually had people tell me that the program easily could be sold, and really it all depends on your audience. But it could easily be sold for 5 to 10 times that price.
Yeah. I'm one of those people. Having taken it, I believe the same. But
right.
For someone who's maybe coming out of, crypto users in general, are a little bit, not always.
I think the issue here is more, what is it you're actually buying? And I think what we do is we get you started really on a profession, because that's really the way that we approach the market. And if you want to survive over the long term, you have to approach this from a professional perspective. And it's sad because, kind of just like what you were just saying a moment ago, the market is actually designed to take away as much money from as many people as much of the time as possible. That's how it's built. In fact, the market itself could not operate if it wasn't that case. So, sadly, the capitalist system is basically built on this sort of FOMO wrecked human emotional response to spending money in the marketplace. And the weird thing about trading and capitalism and all that is you really only have one power in the market. Everything else is irrelevant. The only power that you have is when you actually hit that buy button. That's the only power any of us have. Aside from that, you're totally up to the market's whims. So articulating what it is that's actually going to get you to actually pull that trigger or push that button has got to be paramount. It can't, and I can absolutely guarantee you, if you are at the point where you're actually like looking at the DOM, or you're looking at, bids and offers and deciding, well, should I buy this or should I not? You've already lost the game. You are basically no different than somebody going to Vegas and just saying, do I put my money on black 6 or, red 9 or whatever? and
Mhm.
you're just basically gambling. Um, Ironically enough, this business is it's the one business I find that, like, the analogy, you or I, we couldn't just, watch an hour long video on YouTube on brain surgery and then just walk into an operating room and, okay, I'm ready to do brain surgery, right? But for some reason, people think that, okay, well, I'll just listen to this or I'll just read that newsletter. And all of a sudden, I'm now a professional money manager. And what you have to understand is it's a lot more difficult than that.
Well, and to your point earlier about that's kind of how the market has to operate. I mean, we've got the talking heads that you bring up often, right? And they'll say, oh, buy this here, buy Ripple at $2.47. Like, here's how to sell Ripple. Um, you know, they encourage that. You don't get that on TV where they're saying, like, here's where you make the incision in your grandmother's heart if she falls over. You know what I mean? Like, so we are placed into this space where, it's sexy and cool to be able to go there and throw some money into the stock market and make a killing. And, an entire generation did really well with it in the 80s. If you talk to the boomers, like, not everyone, but there was a sort of
yeah, you better,
generational
and the
cycle
sad
there.
part about that is, and this is the worst part about capitalism. You will always hear about people's successes. Oh my God, they will just go on and on. Look at this great call. But nobody ever talks about their failures. And the irony of it all, and everybody watching this, you have to understand 90 to 95% of all people that play the market lose money. That is absolutely written in stone, but you never hear about the nightmare stories. The only time you hear about nightmare stories is sort of after the fact when everybody's, I was watching a video with Linda Bradford Radke the other day, and she was even talking about it. Misery loves company. So after the market falls apart, then everybody goes, "Oh yeah, that guy's such a crook, man. Oh yeah, I got screwed over by him."
How much did you lose on there?
You'll hear about negative stories, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting misconception about 2017 too. A lot of people, when I got my start there and I didn't have like that sort of background and everyone's like, oh yeah, but that was easy. That was 2017. And I'm just sitting there thinking like, dude, that was not an easy year.
No, in fact, I think I tell you about Kevin and I sitting in the lounge over on TRI. It's the middle of February. Bitcoin was sitting like maybe $1,000, $1,200, something like that. It was dead out there. The insano, ridiculous bull market hadn't really gotten going in earnest. And the pros, we were sitting in there just poring over charts. Where's the W? Where's the W? Find me a W. Find me a W. It's hard work. There's no doubt about it. This is hard work. And usually the good ideas, the time to actually act, it's when nobody else is interested. And that's the hard part about this game is you got to be able to step into the breach when most of the public isn't that interested.
Yeah, and that's kind of what excites me about this year personally is that I've spent the entire year, on TRI working with you guys, gone through the level 1, 2, 3 program, and I've talked to some of these guys that I've gone through it with, Ryan, I think he's watching right now, and a few others, and we're just saying like it just feels good to know that we're positioning ourselves for what may come. And to me and to a lot of people, and I think I've even talked to you, there's a high probability that this is not the end for Bitcoin, right? I mean, like higher than 50, I'd say. That it's going to have another cycle, that it may break some highs. And, I want to be in a position to, dominate that situation when it comes. And so,
well, the one thing I like about you, and this is your teacher talking.
Glad there's one thing.
Is that, amongst other things.
No, I'm just teasing.
And this is where, I think you'll do your community at Bravado a real service. And if we could get a bunch of people at Bravado thinking that way or this way, I think they'll do really well. What we need to find are what are the fundamental drivers? What's the stories? I don't think it's an accident that Litecoin went like 5-fold there over the course of 2019. Why? Because it had a fundamental story that people could sink their teeth into.
Yeah.
Here comes Bitcoin. Something's going to happen to Bitcoin in 2019. 2020, beg your pardon. So if anything, I totally agree with you in that there will be, remember Amazon, somebody pull up a price quote of Amazon right now. I think it's like $1,000 to $1,500. That stock went right down into the pooper, just like everybody else through the dot-com bust. So there will definitely be winners in this space. And the key here is to go through the process. And I think you are a rational investor now. I see how you look for fundamental drivers. Then you look at your price chart and you ask, okay, are we in half decent location? Do we have indicator confirmation that maybe price is stronger than what price is leading you to believe? And then do we have some structure to work with? You got fundamental drivers, good technical setups, you are a rational investor.
Yeah, and that's thankfully something, you know, that I got into prior to learning how to chart. Really was my thing, was just following the narratives, and not necessarily just like, you know, what do I find on Twitter and running with it, but sort of seeing between the lines, right? Like what we used to notice, what I love to call echo pumps, and you know, you see a coin like Neo, you know, ran like crazy because it was being called Chinese Ethereum. And Ethereum ran like crazy. And so the speculation runs rampant, right? And then you had Stratus, who went up to almost, I think, 4th market cap, based again, purely being on like, oh, we're like Ethereum, but we also do C+ programming language. That little simple comparison, suddenly everything gets to shadow Ethereum's price run. And as we've seen, right? So is that kind of fundamental, you know, what do you call it, quantitative, whatever you want to call that kind of analysis that got me sort of sitting pretty in 2017, 2018. And you know, I think the structure that the level 1, 2, 3 at TRI gave me is, I mean, obviously incredibly valuable in my life, but you know, that's the big gap for a lot of people. You know, I think
if anything, I want to turn this around for you.
Yeah.
And I'd like for you to try and convey to your audience because what this really all comes down to is when you risk your hard-earned money in the marketplace, this is all about anxiety. And you know, the idea, what is FOMO, fear of missing out? That is a function of your human psychology and your emotional response to, hey, these guys are all getting rich and I'm not, you know, kind of thing. And then vice versa, what is wrecked and all that kind of stuff. That's, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to buy the Lambos. And oh my God, everything's going to hell. Right? No, get me out. I can't stand the pain. You know, when I used to trade in the pits down in Chicago, we used to always say, you know, the harder trade, the writer, the better the trade is actually the harder position to take. You know, you are actually, and my old boss used to always say this. He says, you are paid to be uncomfortable. You are paid to live a life of anxiety. So how do you do that as a professional trader? And it all comes down to one thing, and that's your plan. You know, so the question I would have for you is going through the process of TRI, vetting your trading plan, really getting to know yourself, what kind of setups speak to you. Has it helped you with this anxiety of risking your hard-earned money in the marketplace?
Yeah. The idea of having sort of a recipe, and
Yes.
you know, your example has always been, your analogy has always been, let's get to a point where it's robotic, you know, automatic. You just spot it. You're like, nice, there's another one. I'm going to do it. And then, you know, you hit your 66% win rate and you have your, you know, 2-3 to 1 RR, and suddenly, you know, in a few years, your portfolio is trending up. That's a beautiful idea. I personally had some difficulty with it early on because I already had sort of a formula that I liked, and it had a lot more to do with that narrative stuff and the speculative sort of quantitative, like we were just talking about, echo pumps and that. And so it was hard to place this new TA into it. And that's sort of been my focus through the summer and through level 3 is, you know, I actually just started the conversation the other day in the crypto fundamentals chat about, you know, let's find ways to put the language into our trading plan around fundamentals, where it may be as simple as like sort of having negative, what do you call it? Negative qualifiers. So you might say, okay, if this fundamental driver shows up, I'll take the position as long as, you know, it's not overbought, as long as it's not, you know, above the 382 or whatever, like finding some sort of, because you may not have that perfect technical setup, but you may have just seen ICX pump and you know that Wan Chain and Aeon follow that every time. And that particular day, the technicals didn't fit my exact plan. I actually missed the Wan one because of that. And then I was like, screw it, I'm buying Aeon. And, you know, the next day it went up 45%. I was like, oh, thank God. So like, that's been my.
Okay. So that, thank God, is that approaching the market for professional, or were you kind of like, I got to.
Oh, not thank God it went up. I'm thank God that I just had the sort of because, on another level, and I've been thinking about this lately, on another level, once you go through the plan and have your program, you also know as a professional, there are times to bend a rule. I think that's and I know you can't say that because you run a school and you're the professor.
Well, no, it's not. I can't say that because
know?
I run the school. The professor is.
But I mean,
I've
just
been down that road before, and it's a slippery slope.
yeah,
And
I
if
guess
it works once or twice, then you can start building dangerous habits.
well, that's the
That's
thing.
all I'll say.
I guess it's bad rule if you have to bend it too, right? You could argue that, and then so that's sort of why I brought up this conversation, because I want to be able to take those setups that I had been taking, but I want to put some sound technical rules into them so that I don't get into the emotional stuff. With ICX
Right.
moving, I was like, okay, this is go time, and I wasn't able to fit it into my current plan, so I had to bend a rule. So I want to fix that rule. So I mean, that's
So
just
if
brutally
anything,
honest.
what I'm hearing, and this is sort of the great part about us as traders, is that we trade setups, but all a setup is what are three unrelated reasons for considering taking a trade.
Hmm.
Just talking to you right now, I can hear we've got related names. I probably, my hunch is, but I'm not positive. I haven't looked at the charts, but I would imagine there was probably volume coming in on the related names.
Yeah.
And of course, we always say volume speaks volumes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, again, I'm not looking at the price charts, but my hunch is that, you probably had some sort of structure to help you get in. Did you have any sort of W's or anything to frame the entry?
Yeah.
And right there, I can start to see a setup develop. So that's one thing that I really like about what we do at TRI is we often say there's a million different ways to skin this cat. And I'm not here to teach you this one particular setup. It's the only way that you can trade. It's the only way that you should trade. And that's the end of the conversation. In fact, that's actually pretty dangerous because what often ends up happening is one setup will work really well during given one type of market state, and then market state changes, and then all of a sudden that setup doesn't seem to be working anymore.
Covered calls fall out of favor. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember for years and years and years, everybody used to follow the leading economic indicators. And it was just like, whenever the leading economic indicators, whatever that says, you go with that kind of idea. And then all of a sudden one day it just stopped working. And everybody's like, well, what's going on? And in a weird sort of way, it's like if too many people are paying too much attention to one particular thing, then the trade starts getting lopsided and people start front running it. And then you get guys who actually go, I know there's a whole bunch of people taking that trade. So that means I know they're all long. So I'm going to try and drive the market down to see if I can flush their stops, right? And the conversation goes on and on. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that building your trading plan and defining the setups that you use in your trading plan is an incredibly personal experience. I'm not going to tell you, look, you must trade this setup. I'm not going to do that because that's a waste of my time. And in fact, because we all have sort of life filters, we actually see things differently. You and I might, did I ever tell you the Merrill Lynch story about how they gave a whole bunch of people paper trading accounts, $100,000. They told them at the beginning of every single day exactly what to buy and what price targets they'd have. And everybody was supposed to enter the trade exactly the same. Then they brought everybody back in 1 month's time, and they all reviewed their balances. And not a single person, and I think the pool was something like 500 people they did it with, not a single person had the exact same account balance at the end of the study. Now, wait a minute. They told you exactly what to buy. They told you what price to buy, and they told you when to take profits. And yet nobody had the same balance. And it just goes to show that we're all humans. And so we bring our own personal experiences to trading, our life experience. So we actually all look at the market slightly different. And if anything, what I'd like to do is, have a conversation with you about exploring those kind of what are the criteria around this? What'd you call them? Echo pumps?
Echo pumps. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how can we build a setup around what you're seeing in the market that speaks to Colin? And that's what
Yeah.
we do at TRI.
Well, and that's actually, I think we'll wrap up in about 5 or 6 minutes as we try to
Am
keep
I
this under.
talking too much? Sorry.
No, actually, you're doing a great job as usual. But we will keep it under 40 if possible. We don't usually, but 40, 45. But real quick, one of the things I want to touch on is that the community that comes with TRI, to your point there, it is a very malleable sort of community. That's part of what I love about it is you've got guys who are saying, hey, I just noticed this. And then somebody go, oh, what do you think of that? Let's see if we can get some rules in there and find a setup and we'll vet it together. And then they go off into their DMs and, they come back a month later and there's a new setup in your library, which is another resource I think.
In fact, a lot of the setups that we have in the library, I've actually named them off of students because I want to make you guys famous, right? We got one guy who comes out of Chile and he's a real character. And we named the setup after him. He vetted it out, and I'm more than the irony with a guy like me is I don't really care. I mean, I'll sit here in a diaper smoking a cigar. If it means that I'm getting good buy and sell signals, then every day I'm in a diaper smoking a cigar, which is a terrible image. I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for that one.
But
we got the Davo meter, right? You've got
Davo. That's who I was talking about out of Chile.
Okay.
His name.
So you've got one of your member, and so we've got the Ray Barbecue. I'm just looking through the library here. The Doji Gap, the Bot, Bearish and Bullish. El Tanganator was one of my first that I really got into and tried.
I learned that setup like 30 years ago. That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, and now we've got it automated, right? So on top of coming in and signing up for the level 1 program, you kind of just get access to a wealth of information. And so I can't oversell this enough. I would never, come on here or talk to my friends about any of this if I didn't think there was value in it. And like you said, and I said this to you in person at West this summer, you could sell this, for $5,000. I've been in a live seminar.
Easily.
I've been in a live seminar where I paid like $100 to go for the weekend, and they're like, "You're going to learn a secret, sauce to the markets." And I just was curious. I was like, "I'll check it out." This was like 2018 when I was trying to figure out how to like secure some funds and not lose it all. And so I put $100 into this thing, and the guy went there, and it was a sales pitch. It was a weekend-long sales pitch. Turns out all he was teaching and talking about was covered calls. I knew there was an end. I actually didn't even stay the second day. I didn't go back, but it turns out somebody that was there, they texted me and he said, "Oh yeah, it was $3,700 to sit in with this guy for a weekend, and then he was charging $10,000 for one-on-one consulting."
Yeah.
And he was just teaching covered calls, which is one part of one module of your 36 module program.
Yeah. This is an interesting aside because if we're running out of time, I really want to get this in.
Yeah.
We had talked before we started this video, like what are some of the things we talked about? And you had said, well, maybe you could talk a little bit about your motivation of why you're even doing this. And this comes from the heart. If I tear up, it's because this is the truth. And it's near and dear to my heart. I used to trade with a prop firm out of Chicago. And I mean, we were talking, trading sizes there earlier. I lost my wife in 2010, early 2011. And as I said, I have a special needs son, so life was a bit challenging. And frankly speaking, I really didn't know what I wanted to do or what I was supposed to do with the rest of this life. And I actually honestly believe, call me crazy if you want, it's fine, I don't mind. But I honestly believe that I had the privilege of being visited by her from the other side. And I remember specifically, she said, you have the opportunity to help a lot of people in this world. They didn't say I was going to. They didn't say, please do this. They said there is this window of opportunity. And literally within a week, I actually told the prop firm guys that I was leaving. I had been introduced in mid 2013 to this crazy thing called Bitcoin. And I came into the community. I used to trade crude Monday to Friday. Then on the weekends, I would come in and trade Bitcoin for fun. And you could really see on these various sites that all it was people just gambling. No structure to their behavior, no sort of articulation of risk management. And they really needed somebody like myself just to come in and just give them some guidance as to how the game is played. Because remember, I come from like a professional, for lack of a better word, professional gambling community. That's what we do as traders. We are gamblers.
Largest casino in the world. Yeah.
But the point here is that and my old boss used to always say this, yes, our job title is discretionary traders, but that doesn't mean we trade at our discretion. And so I started sort of playing connect the dots, trying to figure out what the message from JoJo, my wife, was. And I literally made a commitment. And here's a great analogy. My business partner, we started up the site with, I was without hope. I mean, if anybody's lost their wife, you understand how tough that is. It's not easy. I ran into this gentleman, just the absolute sweetest gentleman. All these people had the best intentions. And then there were a couple little sharks in the community that were just you could literally see that they knew what they were doing, and they were just pulling these people's emotional strings. And this one gentleman and I started working together, and he has Italian heritage, Italian background. And one day I just was like, well, what does your last name mean in English? And he says, translated, it means hope. And the moment that I heard that, I was just like, okay, I see what it is you want me to do, JoJo. And I've dedicated my life for the past 5 years. I didn't come into crypto, and I hope everybody on this, and I don't know if anybody in the public's even going to see this. I hope I'm helping some people.
Yeah, this is public facing. So.
But I didn't come into crypto to make a ton of money. And I know that sounds weird. I did not come into this space to do that. I came into this space to help. So the very first thing that I did was I just said, it's not rocket science. There's tons of people teaching this stuff. But like you said, a lot of these people, it's like bait and switch, right? You come in, oh yeah, I'll teach you the secret formula for nothing, right? And then it's a big sales pitch for some over-the-top price tag that you're just like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. So we tried to keep the price point. In fact, when I first did this course, I actually used to give it away for free, but I actually learned that people only value the information that you teach them based on how much they had to pay for it. So we had to come up with a price point that meant that if somebody committed to the program, they actually had some skin in the game and they were going to pay attention and learn this stuff. But at the same time, too, I wanted to try and keep the price as absolutely as low as possible to try and make sure that this community, which is made up of a bunch of younger people, you're not at the peak income years. A lot of you are just sort of entering the workforce, or, you've got some half decent like IT jobs. You can dedicate $1,000 to your education. And we've just found that happy medium, if we can just somehow keep the price below that $1,000 mark, that seems to be sort of that it's a bit of money and you're making an investment in yourself, but it's not over the top trying to milk people. Yeah. For big bucks. So I don't know whether that helps answer that, but hopefully that gives your viewers a little bit of understanding of who I am.
No, you nailed it. And I think the emotion that you bring to this and the meaning that you've put into it from your own life. And I sensed that early on in my time at TRI and meeting you out West here in person. And believe it or not, I was excited to get into crypto about the potential gains, but I actually am excited about crypto for sort of the Andreas Antonopoulos view of it, which is unbanking the banked, or banking the unbanked.
I've got like about 200 or 300 cryptocurrencies, all free, all paid for, no risk whatsoever. I mean, if that world develops, the banking for the unbanked, right, kind of thing, and crypto actually I'm made in the shade. This portfolio is going to be worth billions of dollars down the road. I just think
all those little dApps, but I just mean the bigger picture, right? To me, it's a bit of an activism piece. Both my parents are activists and, work and social work. And And so, some people thought it was funny that I got into finance, and I'm like, well, you really got to look into this Bitcoin thing, because it is the first and only, and not to get onto a Bitcoin shill here, but it's the first and only real opportunity I've seen for sort of decentralized power system in the world, right? Where we could maybe have an alternative. It's not going to just shift overnight, and I don't imagine it'll shift. There's a great chance that the same powers that be will come in and buy up a huge supply of that and control that market. But it's this idea that we can choose to not participate in this system that personally is full of shit. It's this democracy that is based, on buying out politicians, and we don't get into all that, but that's the vision I see, and the education piece.
The big selling feature, I would say, is I lived through the banks going through this whole sort of automated teller. I remember when they first brought out automated tellers, they swore to the public up and down they would never have fees for using automated tellers. Now, I don't know, were they lying? And now in Canada, we have chartered banks, which means that they have a God-given right to do business. They will never go out of business. They are government chartered institutions, and they are heavily protected. There's only 6 or 7 of them here in Canada. They've got basically an oligopoly. So what right do they have with that incredible position in the marketplace to actually charge people with special needs a fee for having an account at the bank? And of course, we live in this society where you have to have ATM cards and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's utterly insulting to our public the way the banking system has operated. And I believe that something like Bitcoin is the public's response to this, basically a slap in the face to the public by this, 1% or whatever you call it. And that's the huge selling feature of Bitcoin, that, to hell with these banks. They're basically stealing from us. And absurd. Is there an alternative? And I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is that alternative. And we're not even talking about places in the world where you can't even trust the banks.
We're talking about world. Canada, where let's not even safe. Exactly. We don't even have to get into Argentina and all the rest of it. But I think again, that's my passion in the space. It's your passion in the space. It's part of why I consider you more than just a guy that I paid to teach me how to trade. I consider you a friend and a mentor. And I'm really excited to see if we can get some traction in our collaboration as Bravado Trading, a slightly different approach. And not as much of an automated education program that we can offer, but definitely more of a focus on the fundamental side of crypto and sort of that dream that we just talked about that is crypto. And so in that sense, I think there is a lot of synergy potential here. And I'm excited to see.
As rational analysts and rational investors, I would like for us always to be sort of justifying our interest in an idea from a fundamental perspective. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. A good fundamental story has got to be sort of the cornerstone as to why you're actually interested in something. Totally agree with that. I'd also say too, I like your, for lack of a better term, on TRI, we use the expression PMA for the win. Or, when I used to trade down on the floor, guys could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars very, very quickly. So it was critical that you always maintained a positive mental attitude, or PMA. So that actually is a cornerstone of everything that we do in the marketplace, is just be good people. And what I really like, and I see it in you, and this is what, this sort of vision of JoJo and making a positive difference in this world. What I really want is people that go through the TRI program, you in essence become emissaries of good behavior in the marketplace. That you become sort of like beacons of, it doesn't have to be all scammy. It doesn't have to be, milk this person for as much money as you can get out of them. And at the same time too, it doesn't have to be, Big Connect, or, if any of your audience knows Cabbage Coin. I don't know whether you've ever heard of.
Not that far back, but I've seen that video from level one.
Yeah. So, and that's the dark underbelly of capitalism. And it's my mission to do more PMA, less Cabbage Coin.
Well, with that, I think that's a really nice way to wrap up for tonight. And the members at Bravado can speak to sort of, we don't use PMA in the exact way, but it's the idea that we just bring a positive energy and helpful. And I'm in the DMs today talking to people, and just trying to help, trying to boost people up. Yeah, trying to empower and boost people up, and try to encourage them to take that next step. Because it's one thing to learn, to go and the guy gives you some fish. It was the best analogy, right? It's another thing to really get out there on the boat with them and learn how, and put in that time and put in that effort. And for me, it was always a no-brainer to take a little bit of the money that I'd made in the market and put it into education. That might just be me being a teacher and believing in education.
You're investing in yourself.
Yeah.
Like what we
thinking
do
long term,
right, was we teach the process.
Yeah.
The process works. I mean, I work with, billion-dollar money managers who follow the exact same process. The process works. Yeah. The problem is the process is all about being a professional. So your users aren't just like, I'm spending $1,000. What you're really doing is you're investing that $1,000 in yourself.
Yeah, and exactly, and I think we'll just wrap it at that. I would get into it.
You just keep going on and on. I'm sorry.
I could talk to you. No, I could talk to you all day, to be honest. But right now,
I didn't even tell you about the fishing pole story. That's one of my favorite
analogies. I didn't get to that today, but you know what? There's no reason we can't have another visit sometime in the future. Yeah. These kinds of streams are typically going out weekly. So with that, I will simply drop a quick disclaimer, as I must at the end of each of these. The information provided by Bitcoin Bravado and accompanying material is for informational purposes only and should not be used for a basis for any investment or other purposes. Brian might be a financial advisor, but I am not, and none of this is financial advice.
I used to be a licensed broker, but the day that I put my license back, I am not a financial advisor. And what I teach is the process. And the cool part about it is I see there are some TRIers in your chat room now. They can all attest to this thing, learning the process. And the cool part about it is I don't even really like shilling individual ideas. What I like to shill is learn the process. You learn the process, and then you can actually come up with your own ideas on your own. And that's what I love. Sorry, I totally interrupted your disclaimer.
Yeah, totally messed up my disclaimer. I'll have to start again. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
You should consult with an attorney or other professional to determine what may be the best for your individual needs, as we are not registered investment advisors, and we're not recommending that you buy anything. I personally am recommending that you go over to the TRI website and check out their program because I can speak to it. It's incredible. And if you really want to take the next step in your trading, it's the best ticket in town, and that's from the heart. It really is. So thank you, Brian, for coming on tonight. It's been a wonderful pleasure to have you on the show, and I'll see you in the lounge.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time, and good luck to all your people that watch this video tonight. And if you have any questions, I'm only a DM away. More than happy to try and help as much as I can.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you back here next week.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Bye now.
Cheers.